You ready? This is to get you in the mood. This is a heart move. And as we allow the vibration of the heart bowl to resonate within us, we feel that energy center at the point of our heart open up. Open up to receive, open up to flow. And from that place we recognize the presence of the divine. That absolute, all-encompassing, perfect, beautiful, amazing presence. It is that presence which we are. It is that presence which is the cause point of all that exists. It exists in us. It exists moving through us. It exists as us right here and right now. And with that knowing, we move into this exploration of how to access that and use that to have the life that we so desire to have. We come together tonight to explore this idea of awakening to the true power that we have within us to use in every thought, in every action. We come together to do the good work of awakening to our spiritual magnificence. And from that knowing, our lives change. We become clearer. We become more aligned with the ideas and purpose and meaning of our lives. Things get better. This is the nature of awakening. So we come together to awaken, and all is well. All is good, because all is God. And in gratitude for this knowing, to the depths of our very being, we say thank you to life. We say thank you to love. And let it be so. Releasing it into the allness and allow it to reflect back with everything that we see, touch, taste, smell, and know. And so it is.
And so it is.
Thank you. You can turn those lights back on. What's that now? I'm not sure what the key is. I know it really works. Hi everybody, I am not Dr. Barber.
Oh, I couldn't tell.
Dr. Barber has taken the night off. Good for her.
Yes.
She was ready. Although she was planning to be here, I said, Barbara, you don't have to do this. I know how to teach. So she's making soup.
Nice.
So the subject tonight is spiritual mind treatment. How many of you use spiritual mind treatment as a daily spiritual practice? Great. Okay. And those of you that didn't raise your hand, maybe you'll consider it today. It could happen. So we got to do some preliminary stuff before we get too far into this idea of treatment. One is that we got to be clear about the idea of mind, and I know Barbara's been working with you on that. You've been drawing circles with lines and V's and or what look like V's and exploring a lot of that. But tonight we're going to maybe touch on some of that to draw us into this idea of spiritual mind treatment. Ralph Waldo Emerson said there is one mind common to all. Meaning that's all there is there's the mind that we use, and it is all the same mind. Now it seems different because I have a different thought than you do, but that's because we live in this illusion of separateness. But the fact is that if you have a thought, that's the divine thought that flows through you. You may take ownership of it, but the fact is that it belongs to the universe. And that's true with every thought you've ever had and every thought you ever will. And those thoughts that you have obviously are more than just passing images or passing notions. They are truly the things that we create with. And that's why we call it spiritual mind treatment. So there's two things that we do as spiritual beings. They're the same two things that spirit does, because it's all the same. Anybody know what those two things are? Oh, Joe has an idea.
I think it express and experience.
That's it. Express. Oh, you must have read my book. Yeah, express and experience. And that seems pretty simplistic, but it's true. Is there anything you do that is neither an expression that you make into the world or an experience that you take in? Doesn't everything fall into one of those two? Great. So that's the nature of spirit. And the beauty of that is that obviously as created beings that we are, the nature of spirit, we create out, we express out into the world, and then we experience that expression coming back to us as an experience. And everything falls into that divine flow. Everything. The question is, how do you get the things in that flow of expression and experience to be the things you want, instead of the things you don't want? And that's what makes this spiritual practice, it makes it something that you can discipline yourself to do. So if any of you still, and I know it's all of you, still have moments where you don't like what's happening in your life, that's because you're still working on disciplining yourself to have the thoughts that will create the experience that you want. That's all we're doing. It's really that simple. Does that make sense? We're all on the same page so far? Good. So the thing that we do as a spiritual practice is prayer. That's what we do. We call it spiritual mind treatment, and we can go into why. But the idea is that there are moments when we focus more clearly than we do normally. Mostly in our day, in the minutia of life, we're experiencing life, and we're dealing with stuff, and its details, and its minutia, and its grandkids, and its students, and its coworkers, and its traffic, and it's all that stuff. And most of the time we're in a state of reactivity. We're just kind of reacting to it as though it's coming at us. And in that way, we're not really taking any responsibility for it. We're not saying, I'm creating this. And that's an interesting take. That when you start to realize that experience of what's coming in changes based on the expression that you're sending out. There has to be an absolute balance with that. That's why two people can be in the same traffic, and one is having a delightful experience and the other one is life sucks. It's the same traffic. It's the same thing. They're just experiencing it different. Because it has to go through all of your filters. And that's based on what you believe and how you respond to life. So, and I'm not saying that you're not having a direct impact on it. You are. On everything that's happening. Your consciousness is impacting everything that's coming into your experience. Out of what you've expressed in your thoughts and your actions. All is about you. It's all about you. Anybody who tells you it's not about you, they're wrong. It's all about you. And the beauty of that is that if you don't like what's happening, you can change it. I got that real quick when I came into this teaching. I loved it. I remember I was in, bless your heart, you've heard this 1,000 times. I was working at the Crystal Cathedral in Garden Grove, California. I was invited to be one of the facilitators of an event out there. And there was a guy named Bill Wilson, how about that for me? Who was a minister, I don't remember what it was, Church of Christ, Seventh-day Adventist, something like that, who had this remarkable church in Brooklyn, New York, that was there speaking to the group. And he did Sunday school on Saturday, and sent out about 60 buses all across Brooklyn to pick up kids and bring them into this, what looked like a television studio. And they did things that seemed like a game show. But then there was always this amazing lesson that they would give to all these kids that would show up. It was brilliant. Anyway, his point was to all these ministers and rabbis and Muslim clerics in Los Angeles, or in Southern California that particular day, was that the reason there were riots happening, that's how far back it was, the reason there were riots happening in LA was because of the churches. How much do you think all those ministers wanted to hear that? So they're cringing. But I'm in the back of the room and I'm going, yeah! And they're looking at me like, who are you? And I'm thinking, if he says you did this, you can change it. That's the big thing. So anytime you feel like you're being blamed or you're blaming yourself for what's going on in your life, which is where a lot of people go with this teaching. They go, I really messed up. I did this terrible thing and now my life is all. No. If you created that, you can create something else very easily. The same way, just do something, think differently. Have a different thought, a real thought, a conscious thought of a high awareness that is different than the thing you thought before, and you'll get a different result. It will change. I've had times in my life where insurmountable odds were before me. A wall so high I couldn't see the top. I didn't know what to do. But when I figured out I could change what I was thinking, the wall just dissipated into nothingness and I stepped forward. You know, that's the way it works. If you think it doesn't, then you're living in your smallness. And if you realize that anything that you want to achieve in your life can be done if you're willing to change your thinking and your perception of it, and the way you are expressing out your perceived experience of it. If you shift your consciousness on that, you will get a different result. Something will change. Something will happen. I've had an interesting one that I've been working on for 5 years, and I have to swear all of you to absolute confidence. And Judith, you've got to turn the thing off for a minute.
Will do.
And I love to do this.
We're back.
And we're back. And it was really nothing. Don't worry about it. So what I'm saying is that by holding that intent, I had to get clear. How many of you saw the movie Shawshank Redemption? Remember when he would go in to the board that would decide whether or not he could be released? And he'd be, oh yes sir, I can do this, and I'll be a good one, and blah blah blah, and they would never let him out. And finally we told him, I don't care what you do. He was done with it. He wasn't going to play their game anymore. They let him out. You know, that's how it works. He wasn't invested in it. He didn't have to have it. He knew who he was, and he moved forward in his life. And that's kind of what this little thing was in my life, is that I needed to get clear, and I did. And I gave an entirely different take in my application information. And it came back the way I wanted 5 years ago. But trust me, nothing you get in your life is based on your wanting it. Wanting only points in a direction. It does not accomplish or achieve anything. So what we use spiritual mind treatment for is as a tool to get us through the process of being in the state that expresses the thing that we want to experience. It's not the wanting. So, and I'm not making wanting wrong. Never want to do that. But you have to understand, all the wanting does is point you in a direction, like a compass. It tells you where you want to go. It has nothing to do with you achieving or accomplishing anything. Oh, I desired it so much, I finally got it. No. It's about having the consciousness of having the thing that you want. That's how you get it. So we're going to look at how to do that tonight. A friend of mine, Greg Brady, wrote a book a few years ago called The Secret The Lost, I'm going to have to remember, Secrets of the Lost Mode of Prayer. Ever heard of that?
Yes.
Little bitty book,
Yes.
little red book, lovely little book. And just, he lays it out so beautifully. If you know Greg Braden, he's an engineer by trade, but he's gotten on this spiritual path, and he just goes all over the planet checking stuff out. And what he spent a lot of time doing was going into archives of in Tibet and in South America, and looking at what the ancient writings were of the mystics. What he could find that still exists. And he came up with this idea that there's a lost mode of prayer. Prayer is the thing that we use to direct ourselves, to move into a higher level of consciousness. And he said that there are 4 well-known and used modes of prayer. And they are, the first one is called bargaining. We've all done it. Okay, God, if you just give this to me, let this happen, I promise I will always do no, or I will never again do no. We're making a deal with the divine. It's a clever idea, and we do it out of desperation. Does it work? I can't say that it absolutely doesn't work. I can just say it's not the most effective way to do prayer work. Because anytime that you're desperate and up against a wall and feeling that way, usually that's not your strongest position. So, we've got bargaining. The second one is called petitioning prayer. And that's pretty straightforward. It's asking. It's just asking God to give you something. And doing it in lovely words, like, calling God Heavenly Father and all those things that we all grew up with. Most of us anyway. Not you, David. But most of us grew up with the idea that we would petition God because this is really important, and we want God to know that we told this is very important, and blah, blah, blah. Is that an effective way to do it? I think that's probably the least effective way to do it, because we're giving all of our power to an outside entity to see if we can have it. Not a strong position. Kind of got to go with the whims of this, whatever mood God's in that day, right? So you don't get very far with it. The third one's called ritual prayer, and that's a prayer of atonement, and that's common in some of the older disciplines of religion, like the Catholic Church. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord be with you. And whatever else the words are that go with that. And said over and over and over, because obviously I did something I shouldn't have done, and this is my penance, this is my way out. And that's a prayer of a ritual prayer. And then we have a meditative prayer. And some would say meditation isn't really a prayer, because meditating is trying to get quiet enough, still enough, that you can be aware of the void, which the great meditating masters say is where the divine rests. Ah!
Hello, Liz.
Oh, who's here? Wow. Okay.
Not a good idea. Thank you, Judith. Does make her happy to come in, though, doesn't it? Makes me happy for her to go. Did she go out, Judith?
Yeah, all by herself.
Great, all by herself.
Trish took her.
Got it.
She finished the job.
So the idea of meditation being a way to gain awareness of the presence by being quiet enough to get it, which is cool. And I've known a lot of people that are deeply disciplined in their meditation, and I think it probably calms them down a little bit. It doesn't make them any better than anyone else at being consciously spiritual. So I've spent my share of time meditating. It's a valid, valuable discipline. And it's used by people all over the planet for all kinds of reasons and all kinds of ways. Sometimes you do it when you're walking, sometimes you do it staring at a flame, sometimes you do it in the absolute silence, sometimes you do it with background music, all kinds of ways to meditate, not right or wrong, just ways that people use that discipline. And then there's the last one, the fifth one. What could that be? Well, according to Braden, the lost modality is found in many ancient spiritual practices and has several characteristics. One is knowing that the outcome desired already exists. the outcome already exists. Let me tell you that that is the essence of spiritual mind treatment. If you're doing treatment the way it is designed, you come out of the treatment knowing with absolute certainty that the outcome that you are desiring already exists. So great, we found the lost one, and that's ours, and that's the one that we use. So the question is, how does this work, this using this idea that what we are desiring already exists, and living in a place and being in a state of consciousness of knowing that it already exists. I have a quote from a guy named Eugene Davis. Anybody ever heard of him? Old guy, lives outside of Atlanta, studied with Maharishi, I believe. Yogananda, thank you, that's right. And is quite a great teacher. Even in, he's got to be in his 90s. He was old when I got into science of mind. Anyway, he wrote this and it really applies. We pray to God when we think or feel that we are separate from God. When we know God, we pray in God, understanding that prayer is a matter of consciousness, interacting only with itself until higher understanding prevails. One may pray to any concept of God. Results will be in accord with the conviction of one's state and the degree of the surrender of one's illusional sense of selfhood. Although we may pray for improvements of mundane circumstances, the most satisfying experience is realization of God's wholeness, in which nothing is lacking. That kind of nails it. And Holmes says, the power is not so much in the statements we use as it is in the consciousness our words induce. They help us to become aware of that which already exists. So what we're going for in treatment is not to create something. Although, golly, don't we say it all the time? Look what I created. And you could argue that you did create it because you're the one that it began with in the inception by you having the thought. But what you're doing is not actually creating something out of the ethers. You're actually revealing it by saying it's so, by knowing that it's so. And how many of us have brought all kind of garbage into our lives because we claimed it as so? I know this is going to hurt. What do you think the chances are it's going to hurt? I knew I was going to lose that. Well, if you knew that, well, you were right. You were going to lose it. I think it was Henry Ford that said, you can win or you can lose. Either way, depending on what you think. You're right. You know, that was a paraphrase. But the idea is that we're the ones that are determining the outcome we're going to experience based on what we think. And don't think it's what you say out loud that has any more power than what you're thinking in your mind without ever saying it out loud. That is every bit, if not more powerful. I've seen lots of people that, you know, that do treatments or do affirmations and say it over and over and over again, but they don't believe it. So if you don't believe it, you know, the universe doesn't believe it either. It doesn't believe you're ready to experience it. So, and there's that thing of pretend until you get there. But the truth is that the relevance of it is that it comes forth when you can know that it's so. And that's the way Holmes did his treatment work. He would sit in his library, close the door, and sit in there for hours working on one thing. It wasn't like he did a 1-minute miracle like we do. He sat with it until he was absolutely convinced that what he was calling forth was so, that it was already so. And by doing that, his ability to have the outcome he desired was amazing. I mean, he was doing it all over the place, but not flippantly. He had to do the same work that everybody else does. He had to go sit quietly and get clear and do his treatment work. That's where the power is. You know, not just flapping your jaw. That's not what it's about. It's really about getting it and knowing it. The idea of treatment is to convince yourself it's so. Is to absolutely, completely be committed to the knowing that this is so. Whatever it is. And by doing that, you get the outcome that you desire. Anything short of that, hit and miss. So everybody, we want to get to the place where you got this down. And when you use it, when you speak those words, or when you think those thoughts, that you're committed to them. You know that that's absolutely the truth. That's what you're looking for. That's where you're going with this. So you know that spiritual mind treatment has 5 steps. We're aware of that? Okay, we're going to go through the 5 steps. But before we do, I want to ask a question. How many of you have played chess in your life? Okay, good number of people. Any of you a master at chess? Could be. We could have a master in the room. There you go.
Master checker.
So how many of you believe that have played chess believe that you had the full concept of the game as soon as you knew how the pieces moved? That's just enough to get you in trouble, right? So don't think for tonight that you're going to have treatment down. It's the same thing. It has taken me 30 years to get where I am with this. I'm sure you can get there faster than me. But at the same time, don't think that you've got this down and handled and that you can do it because you know how to speak the 5 steps. That's just knowing how the pieces move on the chessboard. Then you have to move into how to really hone that ability to move your mind, to move those ideas to a different place that they'll stay. Here's another piece of the puzzle. We don't create, well, even if we did create, you can't create and one time and have it be that way forever. It's like the idea in Christianity that God created the heavens and the earth. Whatever intelligent force is behind the creation of physical form, it's still creating it. Every single one. It doesn't stop. It's not like, okay, that's done, let's go off to something else and it'll just keep working. No. Creation is a constant state of unfolding. So if you're going, but the lovely thing about it is that once you are absolutely convinced it's so, that thought is in your consciousness. And it continues to operate. So if you are absolutely convinced that something is so, it's good. As long as you know it's so and you have no doubts and no concerns and no confusion around it, it'll keep creating itself that way. It'll keep showing up like that. It'll keep being revealed that way. But if you forget, if you get scared, if you are distracted and have another thought, you get a different result. Has anybody ever talked to you about Willard Fuller?
Yes.
Willard Fuller was a faith healer. And I met when I went to the Miami church, certainly almost 30 years ago. He was this 6'4", white, long white hair, shoulder length or longer, big white beard, spoke with a Louisiana accent. He was a Baptist minister. And he was a faith healer. And he was the one that actually helped me move in consciousness from believing that anything was possible to actually experience things that were impossible. Because what he would do is he would come and work with groups of people, tell his stories about the healings that happen around him, and then invite everyone to come forward and receive a blessing. And it was really simple. He would touch people on the sides of their face and say, "In the name of Jesus, be thy every whit whole." Old English talk. But it was a blessing. And then everyone would sit down and things would start popping. People would suddenly have fillings in their mouths where they hadn't been before. Their fillings, for some people, would turn from amalgam to gold. People would have teeth move. I mean, and he said people were having experiences of healing all through their bodies, but the ones you could see were in the mouth. But most of the stories he told were about healings in the mouth, so that's kind of where our minds went. The night that I met him, I actually had 3 fillings appear in my mouth. Out of nowhere. It was amazing. Yes?
My mother had gold fillings.
There you go.
Yeah.
And the reason I brought it up was one of the ministers down there in Miami had his fillings turned to gold. And every morning he would get up and take his flashlight into the bathroom and lick in his mouth and look at those. They were gold. They were gold. And they were gold. And then one day they weren't. And he said, I knew they were going to change back. There you go. So if you hold a thought, a fear, that even though you've created something brilliant in your life, something wonderful has come forward because you have shifted in consciousness. Don't think it has to always be that way. You know, that's no guarantee. It's not like it's created and it's going to stay forever. It's a constant knowing. It's a consciousness thing. And it's not that you have to think about it every day. But if you hold the thought, and when you do think about it, that's what comes up, that's handled. That's what you get. When I do treatment work for somebody, especially around health things, especially someone here in the community, when I see them on Sunday, I go, how's the healthiest person I know? How's the person with the strongest legs I do it? You know, or I'll say something like that to them, because when I see them, I remember that we treated knowing that they were healthy. We treated knowing that that injury or that pain didn't exist. It was gone. It wasn't there. We didn't treat that way, but that was the outcome that was desired, was health and wholeness. And that means that when I look at them, that's what I have to think. And it worked. It's worked every time for me. And you know, usually I get a chuckle from somebody on Sunday when I say that. But I'm doing my work. I'm keeping that thought absolutely alive in me, knowing that with them. But like the minister I was telling you about, anyone can have treatment work done for them, or even do it for themselves, and get an outcome, get a demonstration, and have it go back. Maybe even to something that's more challenging than they had before. That it's really a matter of consciousness. That's the work. So doing 5 steps of treatment is about shifting your consciousness. That's the point. Do we have any questions yet on this? Yes?
Well, I just had the thought, in the old magic traditions, you always reset your wards every full moon. That was like a cycle that people used, you know, to reaffirm their desire.
That's a great idea. Any system that allows you to reinforce a state of consciousness is valuable. And I'm sure that the Wiccans and all the folks that are in the rhythms of the planet and the universe are probably pretty good at that stuff. You know, so yay, absolutely. You know, whatever it takes, whatever you want to do. That's why often when you learn affirmations, there's such value in posting them around the house, on the bathroom mirror, or in your car, somewhere where you have to think about it. And you have to think about it in terms that support you. Because that's what you wrote and put there in front of you somewhere. So the idea is you want that thought to be reinforced all the time. And it doesn't seem like it makes a lot of sense that thinking about it would actually cause it to be in your life, but that's exactly how it works. It doesn't work any other way. Barbara's first mother-in-law was a Catholic, and she was Italian, and she would pray to a particular saint. And she would light a green candle and pray to this saint. And she said every time she did, whatever she prayed for came to her. Okay, why not? You want to do it that way? That's great. Although, not long before her death, Barbara asked her, we were with her in her home, and asked her how it was going with that saint. She says, it doesn't work anymore. So, you know, however you want to do it. But for her, through much of her life, that was the way that she created it. And she had the thought that it worked. And as long as she had the thought that it worked, it would work. Until it didn't. Anyway. And being as we're still talking in nuances, I want to give you one other interesting little thing that I love to teach when I teach treatment. Well, look, we don't have anything to write with here. Yes?
Wow, where she's like that.
Did I spell it right?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Anybody know what that means?
Many bugs.
Pan means all. Theism means God. God is all. That's exactly what it means. That's an area of thought that says that whatever you can see, whatever you can experience, whatever there is in the universe is God. And in our teaching, we kind of figured out that maybe that was a limiting thought. So another idea was brought forward. Oops, it's doing so good. There we go. Panentheism. Very close, but it has a different meaning. Panentheism means everything is in God. Because the universe can actually be a finite concept. It might have edges. Even if it's expanding at the speed of light, it may actually have edges. That would make it finite. So if you're thinking in terms of the panentheist or the pantheist, you're actually saying that everything is God, or that God is everything. You're actually having a limiting thought, where the idea that the divine is an infinite, it has no edges, it has no limitation, and that the universe exists within it. Now you have the possibility of multiverses. Now you got the possibility of whatever is exists in this thing that has no limitation. And it's actually a more powerful place to be. Because if I'm going to be the divine in either of those two models, I want the second one. So, and just for fun, let me tell you who's in these different camps. The Taoists would be pantheists. Poets, Wordsworth, Whitman, Thoreau, D.H. Lawrence, all pantheists. Einstein, pantheist. Frank Lloyd Wright, the great architect, pantheist. Carl Sagan, billions and billions of stars, was a pantheist. And so James Cameron, the movie guy. Panentheist is a different camp. That would include Plato, Meister Eckhart, Spinoza, my favorite philosopher, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Ernest Holmes, and all the Gnostic Christians would be in that camp. So it's kind of just a nuance, but I think it really takes us to a clearer idea. And it keeps us in our treatment from doing our first step as a pantheist that says, God is the trees, God is the ocean, God is the sky. No, don't do that. That's a limiting thought. All of those things exist within us. So, as we move into step one, that's the thing to watch for, is not to have limiting thoughts in your first step, but to have them be expansive. You can't go all the way, but you can certainly begin with that. So we do. We have 5 steps. Recognition. What would we be recognizing?
God is everything.
Actually, that is not what we're doing, because that would be pantheist. So no, don't be sorry. It's okay. It's just that's the game. That's the thing I want you to kind of catch yourself and avoid. We're recognizing divine presence. Right. Now, can anyone here absolutely recognize divine presence? Then obviously you shouldn't be in a body.
I'm not.
Well, you're certainly acting like it over there. So I don't think you can. I don't think you in your human capacity, nor I in my human capacity, can fully realize and recognize the presence of the divine.
I know you think that.
I know.
And I have experienced that as being devoid of the container of everything. And even though I am now, as an ego, in this position, I remember what that is, and it gave me a total knowing of that I am God. So
Good for you.
that's me.
Good for you. Okay, the rest of us. Here's the deal. We move toward an understanding of the divine. We seek to know it. But I don't think any of us get that full experience in the human experience. That it is something to pursue. It is a direction, not a destination. That's my understanding. And that I don't do as a limitation. I do to say that I must continuously seek to know this. That I cannot rely on a memory. That I cannot rely on some understanding. That I must continuously work in that first step of recognition to recognize the presence.
So it's the journey?
Yeah, it's something that we are forever doing. You know, it's like, and frankly, everybody that sits in a monastery somewhere has this task. That's their job. And the idea is that most people who are truly committed to that don't leave the monastery. They stay there because they're still in that pursuit. And it's a blissful pursuit. It's a wonderful pursuit. But the idea is never be satisfied. Never be satisfied. Never think you've got this figured out. Pursue it. Seek. So I've had some wonderful people in this teaching that do their first step, knowing that God is all there is, or even that all exists within the mind of God, which is, it may or may not be accurate statements, but the deepest understanding of that is what? How do you get to that? You know, so my way of being with that is to always reach a little farther. And one way to do that is to not to use the same words every time you do a treatment. I've had some people say, oh no, I just say those same words because they put me in a state. Well, they put you in a state that isn't as far as you can go. I want you to go farther. I want you to reach out. Get a sense of what the divine is right now. And let that be something greater and more glorious than what you did earlier, yesterday, or this afternoon. You know, take it to a deeper place. And it's not the words. That's why we have to go over this again and again and again. We learn how to use words. Words are a delivery system, but they are inadequate. So one might say that the place to find that is in meditative work. Yet in spiritual mind treatment, we are expressing. And we're, as an extrovert, this is perfect for me because I like to treat out loud and I hear my words and I use them to take me to a place of understanding. And I'm never completely at the final destination. I'm always in pursuit of it. I'm always seeking a greater, a deeper, a more full understanding of the presence. And I have found that incredibly valuable to me, rather than saying, no, got it figured out. I'll say these words and that'll be it. I find that lacking, for me personally. So I offer that to you, is don't get into a habit if you're going to use this as a spiritual practice, to say the same words every time you do your recognition statement, because that will tell you that you're at the same level you were the last time you said those words. So however you do your first statement, you're recognizing of divine presence, make it a stretch. Make it a stretch. Make it take you further than you went last time. That make sense? Oops, maybe I should pick up on my notes. So we do use, to help us do that, there are three concepts that we use to begin to get a sense of what that is. And I found these actually between the first step and the second step to be incredibly valuable. So the things that we know about the divine that we can continue to pursue an understanding of is that the divine is omnipresent. What does that mean? Yes, Michaela?
It means it's everywhere.
It means that God is everywhere. That's a good start. The first thing that we get help with on that, though, is that if God is present everywhere, it isn't what many of us as children were told, is that God's watching you. It means that if God is everywhere, then God must be where you are, too. That there can't be God and you. If a presence is required, and this says that absolute presence, then God must be at the point of view. Nothing short of that. Okay. I haven't thought about that, it's gone, so we'll just move on. Spell that right? Yeah. God is omniscient, meaning that God is all what? Knowing, yes. So if God is all-knowing, then that doesn't mean that God knows what you're thinking. It means that God is your thought. Because all-knowing is God. So whatever, oh no, not me, not those thoughts. Those wouldn't be God's thoughts. Those are not good thoughts. Well, yeah, all-knowing is God. So whatever you're thinking, those thoughts are God's thoughts. Now, you can take it the other way, and rather than seeing that God has mundane or obsessive or any other kinds of thoughts, think in terms that when you think clearly, you speak with the authority of the divine, because that idea that is emerging from you is a divine idea in the mind of God. So it allows you actually to be empowered by it. It's not, don't go down the rabbit hole with this and find something less. Move into something greater, knowing that you have the capacity within you to act with the authority of the divine. What is the authority of the divine? It's this whole idea that your thought becomes your experience, that your expression becomes your experience. That's the divine action. That's how the universe is organized. So when you begin this process of thinking consciously, what you're doing is saying that those ideas must be the ideas of the divine, and they have the creative essence to be brought into full demonstration, full manifestation. Okay, let's see. And then there's the third one. Omnipotent, meaning powerful. Many people in more traditional Western religions would say that means that God has some power over you. But that can't be, because whatever power you have is divine. So your ability to move your eyelids, your ability to raise your arm, your ability to walk, your ability to have a heart that beats is all the power of the divine. So all power is God, whatever it is, whether it's a ripple on the water or hurricane. It's the power of the divine. It couldn't exist. All animation is the divine presence. All celestial bodies moving around. Atomic particles moving through space. It's all God. It all exists within the presence of the divine. It's all held in this one presence. So it's everything. It's everywhere. It's all. And it's right here. And that's the beauty of this too, because being omnipresent, omniscient, and omnipotent means, according to Thomas Troward, which I'm sure you'll read and study before this is all over, says that the presence of the divine exists in its entirety at every point. At every point. It's not just, the vastness of the divine. It's also the absoluteness of the divine at the point of view, and at every other point. Wow. Oh, it's exactly like a hologram. That's exactly the concept. So that the presence of the divine exists wholly at the point of view. The power that created the universe dwells at the point of view. All of your expressions emerge from that absoluteness of the divine. That's some awesome power. So that's the way you can experience the divine. Now, Troward did another thing, and Holmes did his little bit on it too, but it's kind of good to see how they came up with this. They said that there are attributes of spirit, and we do a nice thing on Christmas Eve with this, with the 7 attributes of spirit. But by all means, don't think that these are the only attributes of spirit. They're just the ones that are really nice to focus on. They're very limiting in their scope, but isn't it nice to have something to focus on when you want to see if you're in alignment with something that is working and expanding and functioning in your life? You know, so these are the ones that Troward and then Holmes came up with.
and gotta go around.
Yep.
Okay.
There it is. Yeah, because we're still talking about recognition of spirit. That's why I put it over here on the side. So if you're looking for some aspect of the divine that you can easily recognize and attribute as spiritual nature, these guys are really easy. Now the truth is that all the stuff in life that you don't like, that you don't want, what's it called when there's no more food? Famine, pestilence, war, murder, all that ugly stuff, that's God too. Because it can't be anything else. But what we want to do is we want to focus on the way we want to experience life. So Thomas Jordan and Ernest Holmes used these kinds of ideas as the essence of the divine, so we have something to focus on. And that's a great idea. So these are set to be the things that you can always count, and you can go through them and see how if they're absolute, if they meet the criteria of being in this omnipresence, omniscience, and omnipotence, then that works. So where do you start? Peace. Well, how can you say peace is omnipotent because there's war? Well, here's the deal. All the studies that are coming out now tell us that we are much more at peace in the world than we are at war. What's different is that we have this high level of information coming at us. And we've got how many billion people on the planet now? 7?
Something like that.
Yeah, and 100 and a few people were slaughtered in Paris last week, and the world goes into a major panic. Now, not to say that there's not something there at all, and not to state the value of those lives. That's heartbreaking. That's something. There's 7 billion of us. Most of us are at peace. But the media gives us this hype about what happened in Paris, and we all go, oh gosh, the world's coming apart. One of the things I wrote on Facebook after it happened is 100 and whatever people died in Paris. And that same day, 13,000 children died in the world from starvation. What are we looking at here? Okay, we're finding our way. Nothing about that is not worth looking at. At the same time, most of the world is at peace. And over time, we are becoming more and more peaceful. We are just becoming more aware of the violence of the world. So, peace is the natural state. Power is the natural state. That's what we're talking about tonight, how powerful we are as spiritual beings. We are unlimited in our ability to create our lives. That is awesome power. Most of us don't use it. Most people on the planet haven't a clue. They think that life happens to them. And we're learning that we're actually creating our lives. Beauty. Beauty is a perception, but if you take the time to look, there's beauty everywhere. Joy. My guess is that there's more joy in the world than there is fear. And that's the way that life is continuing to evolve, is that's what's showing up. Love, light, and wisdom, the same kind of thing. So the idea here is where are you putting your attention? Use your spiritual mind treatment to make certain you're putting your attention toward the elements of life you want to experience. That's why you have that list. And with that, I think we're going to take a break, and we'll come back. And what I know is that presence and power that is one is absolutely present right here and right now. It is all that is true and real. And as we accept that, we know that everything is in perfect order. Life is unfolding as it must for all of us. So as we leave this experience of Barbara's class, I know that whatever is next, we take with us the wisdom that we gathered in this experience, and that all is well, and that God is in the midst of everything that is, because God is all that there is. And certainty that that is so. I simply let it be in gratitude and love, and so it is. Have a great week. We'll see you again soon. Bye now.